Hello, my name is Chef Kevin. I'm a nutrition educator with Leah's Pantry. And today I'm going to be doing a food demo for roasted root vegetables. I can share my screen really quickly and show you the recipe from eatfresh.org. It's just this very simple recipe, roasted root vegetables, right on eatfresh.org. We're going to be taking kind of inspiration from this. This works for root vegetables or any other really hard vegetables. Go ahead and find this link on the website and we can follow along. I'm actually going to be using a kabocha squash. So kabocha squash is actually one of my favorite vegetables because it is relatively inexpensive. The skin has a lot of fiber. It has a lot of flavor. It has kind of a sweet potato flavor, but it's a little bit hardier. You can use it just to roast it, eat it on its own, eat it with salad, eat it in a curry. It kind of has a flavor almost like a butternut squash. And I think it can look a little intimidating because it looks like a little pumpkin, right? It looks like you wouldn't want to eat this, but with the proper knowledge, you can process this down and roast it. So we're going to get started. I've already washed this and given the skin a nice scrub. We're going to actually be keeping the skin on for this. You can take a peek around. There will be some of these like little rougher parts. You can just shave those off with your knife if you're worried about them. Though once this is cooked, everything will be pretty tender and edible. But just in case, just if you're worried, you take off some of this rougher stuff on the outside. One thing with kabocha squash is we should be really careful when we're doing our knife safety, just because it's a hard vegetable and it can be easy to put too much pressure on it. So I want to make sure that we're using a nice sharp knife. And the first thing that I do is I will cut it in half. So I'll get just above it, get on either side of this little nub and just cut it straight down. You can kind of use your arm here to help get the knife really stuck in the kabocha squash. And then once it's safely in with a flat palm, press it all the way through. It'll be hard no matter what kind of knife you're using, but definitely a sharper, heavier knife will help with that. And this is what we got. So from the side with the nub, I'm just gonna cut those little nubs off. Those are not really as edible. They will be a little bit tougher. I'm just gonna cut until I remove most of that little root part. Same thing on this side. All right. I should mention, since we're going to be roasting these vegetables, I already have the oven preheated to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. You could do 425 or 450, kind of depends if your oven runs hot or not, but you generally want it pretty hot, and I'll explain why we want it hot in a little bit. So we've got these insides of the kabocha squash, and these seeds, while they look amazing, are not edible, at least not in the way that we'll roast them, so we want to take it out. So just use a big spoon. Doesn't have to be as big as this one. It can be a smaller spoon. I just find it a little bit easier with a bigger spoon, and just go in there and dig that out. I have a little bowl here for all my compostables. So that's good. Just try to get all the seeds out, try to get all that extra kind of fibrous stuff out of there. You can keep the seeds and wash them, get rid of, a lot of this like fibrous orange flesh, and then let them dry and use those for whatever you would use, pumpkin seeds with still the outside, the husk on them. My grandma loves to save these and uses them to make mole. Mole is just a type of sauce that's based on roasting a bunch of vegetables and seeds and blending it together with some either like chicken bouillon, some chicken stock or water, vegetable stock. So now we've got these two ready to go kabocha halves. And now we're just going to want to cut them into little slices. You can really cut this however you want. I like to do these nice big slices so it looks like a little cross section of this pumpkin. Usually when I do this to get started, I'll actually hold this and just do a simple cut, just down. Just make sure I'm really stabilizing it with my left hand and cutting away. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, you could put it on the flat side, hold it down, use a claw with your offhand to make sure you keep your fingers out of the way of the knife, and you just slowly but surely make your way through it, kind of cutting towards the center as you do it. Once you get here, you can always flip it over if you feel more comfortable cutting this way. You can keep going this way until it's maybe too small to cut it this way. And we're just roughly trying to get these about almost 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 inch slices. They don't all need to be perfectly the same size. We're going to roast them. They're going to cook. It'll be fine. It's not the end of the world. One thing about the skins on this is just in general, when you're roasting root vegetables or vegetables like this that do have an edible skin, the skin has a lot of fiber. So the skin is actually a very healthy part of the vegetable. And if you ever get a piece that's really, really big like this, you can always chop it in half that way. It's totally fine. But the skin has a lot of fiber, which is really good for us. It's good for our gut. It's good for keeping you feeling full. It's good for good bowel movements. One of my favorite things is a good bowel movement. I'm just going to finish chopping these up. If it's a little hard and you need 2 hands, the best way to do it is first use your offhand. Let me get these out of the way. If you find the kabocha squash too hard to cut through, you can hold with your offhand and just kind of how we cut it in half, make an incision so it's stuck in there. And then you can use your other hand to help push it down. I find that that's the easiest way to cut through harder vegetables like this, butternut squash, some potatoes, but just make sure you do it in a way that feels safe to you. It's the most important part. I'm going to cut this one in half. All right. So we have our kabocha squash. My oven made a little sound a little while ago telling me that it's ready. I'm going to move this cutting board and bring out a tray. I've gone already ahead and prepared another kabocha squash because I'm going to be roasting 2 here. But just one is good. You could use a smaller cookie sheet. This is like a big cookie baking sheet. And I've already prepared this side, but all I'm going to do is add about a tablespoon of oil, maybe 1.5 tablespoons. You really, the way that I was taught to roast vegetables properly is you want the entire vegetable to be shiny, so it has a little bit of oil on the outside, but not dripping. You don't want so much oil that it's dripping. And then just a little bit of salt. You can add anywhere from about 1 teaspoon of salt to 2 teaspoons, just depending on how salty you'd like it. If you are trying to watch your salt intake, you do not need to add any salt. This will taste delicious on its own, but I like to add a little bit of salt to my food just to give it flavor. Salt also does help cook the vegetables down. It helps draw moisture out, so that'll be good when we're in the oven. Just mix it up, and you'll notice that it is shiny. It's got that sheen of oil, but it's not dripping. So that's good. We're good. Now I'm just gonna want to arrange it however it all fits. Probably gonna have to play a little bit of kabocha Tetris, but I don't mind. If you don't like this, find your nearest 11-year-old child that loves Tetris and tell them to get to work. Yeah, kabocha, it has such a beautiful orange color, and the skin is this nice green that once it cooks down, it'll become kind of soft. It's really, really delicious. I would never peel a kabocha squash. I would always include the peel on there, and we get all that good fiber. All right. To the best of your ability, make sure that at least the side of the kabocha squash is touching the pan. Now we're going to pop this in the oven. Again, mine is at 425 degrees. And then it can take anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. So I'll probably check in on it in about 15 minutes. You can flip them halfway if you want more even coloring, but it's definitely optional. You could just leave it on one side and it'll be a really, really nice sear, a really nice caramelization on one side. Popping this in the oven. While we're waiting, you could always prepare a salad dressing if you were going to throw that into a salad. You could prepare the main part of your dish if you're going to serve this along with some fish or any type of starch, any type of healthy protein, maybe some other fruits and veggies. I did want to explain why we have the oven at such a hot temperature. 425 degrees might sound hot. Sometimes people do it at 450 or even 500. So when we have the oven at a high temperature, that is going to help us get a nice roast on the vegetables. That means get a nice color on the outside, get it cooked. And when we get a nice color, a nice sear on the outside, that helps maintain some of the moisture on the inside of the vegetable. So really, to have a beautifully seared, still kind of like juicy, still delicious vegetable, we want it at a high temperature for not so long of a time. If we were to do the same thing, but let's say at 300 or 350 degrees Fahrenheit, number one, it would take longer. And number two, it would be a lot softer and it would have lost a lot more of its moisture. So when you're cooking things at a lower temperature, it'll steam and a lot of that moisture will come out. But when you're doing it at a high temperature, you'll get that sear and the sear will trap in some of the moisture. So it's just preference. I think it tastes a lot more delicious. And when you have any seared vegetable, it's just really, really great. So I'm going to set a timer from now for about 15 minutes and we will check in and see where they're at. All right, our kabocha squash has been in the oven for about 15 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. I'm going to pull it out, check them out. This is what we're working with right now. I'll grab a piece and kind of show you what they look like. One cool thing about the kabocha squash is you can kind of see as it's being cooked. We'll grab this piece right here. As it's being cooked, you can kind of see the color change. You can see that light orange turn into a kind of a darker orange. That light orange is kind of the starchy part of the kabocha. This is still definitely needs a little bit of time to finish cooking. It's starting to look good on one side. I'm not going to flip it. I think it'll get a nice sear on that side. And I'm going to put it back in the oven for another 10 minutes. Our kabocha squash has been in the oven now at 425 for about a total of 25 minutes. And we're going to take it out. It should be it. Smells incredible. My dad just walked in and he said it smells like bread, like fresh bread. Just to give you an idea of kind of the smells that are happening over here. So when we talk about that caramelization or that nice char, this is kind of what I'm talking about. This is what we're looking for to trap in that moisture, to get us that flavor. The best way to really check is to get one of these bigger pieces and just try to use a utensil to cut right through it. And if you can cut simply through it, then it is done. These are done. I'm going to let them cool. Again, these are delicious just on their own as a side to a main. You could let them cool completely and serve them with a salad, serve them with a little bit of vinaigrette just on their own. And you can do this for any type of root vegetable or hard vegetable. Will be anywhere from 20 to 30, maybe 40 minutes in the oven, just depending on how hard, how starchy it is. So hope you enjoy. We'll see you the next time. Thank you.